Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring the life and impact of Charlie Kirk, a name that became synonymous with conservative youth activism in America. From founding one of the most influential political organizations targeting young voters to becoming a household name in political media, Kirk's story is one of ambition, controversy, and undeniable influence. Before we begin, it's important to note that this video takes on additional significance following the tragic events of September 10, 2025. When Kirk was fatally shot while speaking at Utah Valley University. Today we'll examine not just who Charlie Kirk was, but the lasting impact he made on American politics and conservative activism. So let's dive into the life of Charlie Kirk, the man who transformed how conservatives engage with young Americans. Charles James Kirk was born on October 14, 1993, making him just 31 years old at the time of his death. Growing up in the Chicago suburbs, Kirk's path to political prominence wasn't typical of most activists his age. While many of his peers were focused on typical teenage concerns, Kirk was already developing strong political opinions and entrepreneurial instincts. He attended Wheeling High School in Illinois, where he first began to articulate his conservative viewpoints. What's fascinating about Kirk's early years is that he didn't follow the traditional path of attending a four-year university, a decision that would later become central to his political message. Instead of pursuing higher education immediately after high school, Kirk chose to dive headfirst into political activism. This decision wasn't made in a vacuum. Kirk often spoke about feeling alienated by what he perceived as liberal bias in educational institutions. This personal experience with what he saw as ideological conformity in schools would become a driving force behind his later activism. By age 18, Kirk was already thinking about how to counter what he viewed as the monopoly of liberal ideas on college campuses. This wasn't just theoretical for him, it was personal, and that personal conviction would soon translate into one of the most successful conservative youth organizations in modern American history. In 2012, at just 18 years old, Charlie Kirk co-founded Turning Point USA with Bill Montgomery. The timing was significant. Barack Obama was president, and many conservatives felt that young voters were overwhelmingly liberal. Kirk saw this as both a problem and an opportunity. The organization's mission was straightforward but ambitious: promote free markets and limited government among high school and college students. But Kirk's approach was anything but traditional. Instead of relying on dry policy papers or academic debates, Turning Point USA embraced social media, flashy events, and provocative messaging. They understood something that many political organizations missed. To reach young people, you had to speak their language and use their platforms. Show footage of TPUSA events. The organization grew rapidly. Within a few years, TPUSA claimed chapters on hundreds of college campuses across the country. They organized events, brought conservative speakers to campuses, and created a network of young conservative activists. But perhaps more importantly, Kirk positioned himself as the face of this movement. He wasn't just running an organization, he was building a brand. And that brand was Charlie Kirk, young, articulate, unapologetically conservative, and willing to take on liberal professors, administrators, and students in very public ways. The success wasn't just measured in membership numbers. Major conservative donors took notice. The New York Times credits him with turning the organization into a well-funded media operation, backed by conservative mega-donors like the Wyoming businessman Foster Friess. By his mid-20s, Kirk had transformed from a teenager with strong political opinions into the CEO of a multi-million-dollar organization with national influence. Charlie Kirk understood something crucial about modern politics. To have real influence, you need to be more than just an organizer. You need to be a media personality. Kirk leveraged every platform available. He hosted The Charlie Kirk Show, a daily radio program and podcast that reached hundreds of thousands of listeners. He was active on Twitter, Instagram, and particularly TikTok, where he pioneered a new model for conservative political advocacy, merging multi-platform media commentary with in-person gatherings and get-out-the-vote drives. What made Kirk different from many political commentators was his focus on engaging directly with opposition viewpoints. His Prove Me Wrong events became legendary. Kirk would set up a table on college campuses, put up a sign with a conservative statement, and invite students to debate him. These weren't quiet academic discussions. They were often heated, always filmed, and frequently went viral on social media. Kirk thrived in this environment. He was quick-witted, well-prepared with statistics and talking points, and unafraid of confrontation. But Kirk's media presence went beyond campus debates. He became a regular on major news networks, wrote books, and spoke at high-profile conservative events. In 2024, Kirk used his speech at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee to praise Trump as an economic master and argue that Gen Z voters could not afford another Democratic administration. His influence extended to policy discussions as well. Kirk wasn't just mobilizing young conservatives. He was helping shape conservative orthodoxy on issues ranging from education to immigration to religious liberty. Charlie Kirk's relationship with Donald Trump became one of the defining aspects of his political career. From early in Trump's political rise, Kirk positioned himself as a key ally and advocate. This wasn't just about supporting a candidate. Kirk saw Trump as validation of many of the anti-establishment arguments he'd been making for years. Trump's criticism of traditional institutions, his use of social media, and his direct communication style aligned perfectly with Kirk's approach to conservative activism. In May, Trump lauded Kirk's contributions, saying they helped him win the vote of young people in 2024. And Charlie Kirk will tell you TikTok helped. But Charlie Kirk helped also, Trump said during an Oval Office ceremony. During the 2024 election cycle, Kirk's influence was particularly evident. During the 2024 election, Turning Point's advocacy wing, Turning Point Action, helped with the Trump campaign's on-the-ground organizing work. This wasn't just endorsement. This was active political organizing. Kirk's political evolution was notable in other ways too. In 2018, Kirk urged conservative Christians to respect the separation of church and state. Today, he calls that foundational principle a fabrication. This shift reflected broader changes in conservative politics and Kirk's own ideological development. Trump often credited Kirk with bringing many young voters and voters of color over to his side during the 2024 presidential campaign. Whether you agreed with his politics or not, Kirk's ability to expand the conservative coalition beyond its traditional demographics was significant. Charlie Kirk's prominence and provocative style inevitably generated significant controversy and criticism throughout his career. Critics argued that Kirk oversimplified complex policy issues and relied too heavily on inflammatory rhetoric, rather than substantive policy discussion. His campus events, while popular with supporters, were often criticized as being more about generating viral content than fostering genuine dialogue. Academic critics pointed out that Kirk, who didn't complete a traditional four-year college education, was nonetheless positioning himself as an expert on higher education policy. His book, The College Scam, published in 2022, argued that universities were bankrupting and brainwashing young Americans, a message that resonated with many conservatives but was dismissed by many educators as overly simplistic. Kirk's outspoken political activism received criticism and controversy. Some of this criticism came from the left, where he was seen as promoting divisive rhetoric. But interestingly, Kirk also faced criticism from some quarters of the conservative movement who felt his approach was too confrontational or his messaging too simplified. The campus confrontations that made Kirk famous also generated their share of controversy. Critics argued that these events were designed more to create viral moments than to genuinely change minds or foster understanding. Kirk's evolution on religious issues also drew criticism from different directions. Some secular conservatives were concerned about his embrace of Christian nationalism, while some traditional religious conservatives questioned his earlier positions. Despite these controversies, or perhaps because of them, Kirk remained a prominent figure who commanded attention and influenced political discourse. Regardless of one's political views, Charlie Kirk's impact on American politics and conservative activism is undeniable. First and most obviously, he helped create a pipeline for young conservative activists. Turning Point USA chapters on hundreds of campuses meant that thousands of young people were exposed to conservative ideas and given organizational experience. Many of these individuals went on to careers in politics, media, and activism. Second, Kirk helped pioneer new methods of political communication. His use of social media, particularly platforms popular with young people, showed how political messages could be adapted for different audiences and platforms. His success on TikTok in particular demonstrated that conservative voices could compete effectively even on platforms dominated by younger, more liberal users. Third, Kirk showed how campus activism could be used not just for organizing but for content creation and media attention. The Prove Me Wrong format has been copied by activists across the political spectrum. Perhaps most significantly, Kirk helped prove that there was a market for conservative content aimed specifically at young audiences. This opened doors for other conservative content creators and showed that young voters weren't monolithically liberal. Kirk is a 31-year-old conservative activist and father of two who helped found Turning Point USA, a prominent nonprofit that activates conservative youth on school campuses. The fact that someone so young could build such influence showed that political leadership didn't have to wait for traditional career progression. The tragic circumstances of Kirk's death have only amplified discussions about his legacy and the state of political discourse in America. Charlie Kirk's life was cut tragically short at just 31 years old, but his influence on conservative politics and youth activism will likely be felt for years to come. Whether you agreed with his politics or not, Kirk represented something significant in American political life. The power of young voices, the importance of meeting people where they are, especially online, and the potential for outsiders to build influential movements. His story reminds us that in American politics, age, traditional credentials, and institutional backing, while helpful, are not prerequisites for influence. Sometimes, conviction, communication skills, and the right timing can be enough to change the political landscape. What do you think about Charlie Kirk's legacy? How do you think his approach to political activism changed conservative politics? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the figures shaping American politics.